Welcome to this week's dose of Emuna for Shabbat Kodesh, the day of knowledge. Shabbat essentially is that day, the day where we can acquire knowledge, thought. It's the source for the Jewish people to merit the quality of knowledge called da'at. As it's written, observe my Shabbat, for it is a sign between me and you, for your generations to know, ladat, that I am God who sanctifies you. When we come to a point of inner knowing, but to the point where that knowing resonates every essence of our being, we're overwhelmed with an outpouring of joy. When a person knows something with such clarity, they reach such an exalted level of understanding in their heart that it permeates their entire essence. Da'at is the bridge between the mind and the heart. When you know something so well, when it's so real for you, that it actually affects the way that you interact in the world. It affects the way you move your hands. It affects the way you walk. It affects the way you interact with people. Shabbat is a day of knowing, where we need to work on instilling the knowledge and the thought that will eventually bring us to a place of inner peace and joy. Being that the Shabbat is a day of thought, it also is then the source of our ability to live a life of joy. In fact, when you look at the word machshava, when you arrange it in different order of the letters, machshava can also read besimcha. So the idea of being in a certain knowingness, in a certain thought, is meant to give birth to a state of true joy. On the Shabbat, there are two principal concepts that are basically revealed. One is the idea of chamisha, of five. The five responds to simcha. We said simcha is one of those beautiful gifts that we, God willing, are gifted through the idea of knowingness on Shabbat, and that corresponds to the number 5. And yet, Shabbat is the seventh day. Seventh day, 7 in Hebrew is Sheva. And that word, Sheva, corresponds very closely to the idea of Sova. Sova is contentment, satisfaction. And we read on the Tfilat Shacharit, the morning prayer of Shabbat, we say, those who observe the Shabbat and who invoke the pleasure of the Shabbat, they rejoice in your kingship. All of them are satiated and receive pleasure from your goodness. In Hebrew, Yismechu v'malchutcha shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg. Shabbat, kulam yizbe'u v'yit'angu b'tuvcha. The word Yismechu, they will rejoice, corresponds to the idea of 5, the 5 levels of the soul. And the word yizbe'u, satiation, that they will be satiated, that corresponds to the number Sheva, 7. So what we see here is that on Shabbat Kodesh, there are two things that essentially we connect to. One, the simcha essentially connects us to the 5 levels of the soul. And also, the idea that it's the 7th day, also 7 implies a sense of contentment, satisfaction, of wholesomeness. So Be'ezrat Hashem, there are many, many beautiful gifts that Shabbat gives us. Let's remember to put our mind to it, to increase our simcha, and to really elevate all those levels of our soul and be fully connected with the true joy embedded in Shabbat Kodesh. Have a great Shabbat.